Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Leslie if you don't know me. Today's video is going to be a movie and makeup video, and I've only done one of these prior where I've talked about many movies, but today's video is going to be just focused on one movie, and I'm going to be talking about The Great Gatsby. It's actually one of my favorite movies. If you guys want to see what the movie is about, if you guys are interested, I am going to mention pretty much the whole movie. So a spoiler alert, if you have not seen it yet, definitely don't watch this. I won't spoil everything for you, I'll leave some stuff out, but The Great Gatsby, it's very well known. The book, of course, by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I know when I was in high school, I read it. I know in high school, that was one of the required pieces to read for literature, so I have read the book and have seen the movie. If you guys are interested though, I'm going to be talking about that today and doing my makeup. If you want to see what that's about, then just keep on watching. Alrighty, so I'm going to be talking about The Great Gatsby. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. It's a really good movie. Not as good as the book, of course. Nothing's ever as good as the book, I feel like. But it is a really good movie. It is directed by Baz Luhrmann, or Baz Luhrmann, however you want to say his name. It's B-A-Z, Baz Luhrmann. But anyways, he's a really good director. His movies, you can definitely tell that they're his movies. If you guys have seen Elvis, Romeo and Juliet, those are the examples that I have, but if you've seen those movies, you can definitely tell his style of movie and how he makes his movies, the different scenes in there. If you're that kind of person, of course, that looks into the cinematography, the way things are filmed, feel that they give to certain movies, the way that he uses music along with his movies, it's just really, really good. But anyways, that's what I'm going to be talking about today. It's The Great Gatsby, and of course it stars Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm not very good with actors and actresses' names. I can remember their face. I'd be like, oh yeah, she's from that movie or he's from that movie, and I always forget the names. Yes, Leonardo DiCaprio, of course, plays Jay Gatsby. Tobey Maguire, which is Nick Carraway. Daisy is played by Carey Mulligan, and Tom Buchanan is played by Joel Edgerton, and Elizabeth Debicki is she plays Jordan Baker, and then you have Isla Fisher who plays Myrtle Wilson, and we have Jason Clarke who plays George B. Wilson. Those are the main characters in the movie. Of course, there's other people in there I won't mention, but those are pretty much your main characters in the movie. Let me start doing my makeup, or I'm just gonna keep talking and not actually talk about the movie. So the movie starts off with the scene of this green light over the lake, and it kind of looks like it's like a lighthouse type of thing. So that's how the movie starts off. That does come into play later on in the movie, and you guys will know if you have watched the movie how that comes into play. So it starts off that way while Nick Carraway's voice, which is Tobey Maguire's character, he is a writer, so he is talking while this scene is happening, and he talks about how his father told him to always look to the best in people. So that's how it starts off, and the green light is still flashing. He's talking about the 1920s, of course, the golden era, or whatever you want to call it, before the time when there was prohibition and all that kind of stuff. And then you'll see this other scene where there's like snow and stuff. Times have changed. You can tell that time has gone by from when he's talking about the earlier years, and you will see that in that scene. And then you see him talking to someone, and in that it seems like it's a doctor type of character that he's talking to. I'm thinking it's like a psychiatrist, about how, you know, things have scarred him and things have left him a certain way after what had happened before he got to that place. The movie is pretty much before what has happened, before the doctor opens up the file and you can see his file that says he's an alcoholic, he has anxiety, he has like anger issues and stuff like that, and what he went through is what made him this way now. And then the doctor says, who is Gatsby, pretty much, and he says, it's the most hopeful person that I have ever met and that I probably will never meet again. Like another person like Gatsby. And while he's telling him about Gatsby, he asks him where he met him, and he tells him at a party in New York in 1922. So they go back to that era. You see the buildings, the New York buildings, and loud music, and the fast pace of the city back then, and everything was new, so many things, money, people with money, stocks, that sort of thing at that time, of course, in the 1920s. He's a writer, but he wants, of course, everybody wanted a piece of that wealth at that time in the 1920s. Stocks were up, had reached its highest point at that time. So of course he wanted a piece of that. So he went to New York, and that is what he's talking about at that scene, pretty much. Him wanting to be part of that wealth and invest in the stock market and be one of those big investor type guys back then, right? He talked about Wall Street. He talked about the parties and how there are big parties and how everything just seemed bigger than the ban on liquor had backfired, so that made it cheaper. Of course, at this time there was prohibition going on, so they had the speakeasies. If you don't know what a speakeasy is, it's like a underground bar without, the government knowing, or not the government, but well, yeah, pretty much. Prohibition's pretty much not being allowed to have alcohol or any of that illegal stuff, I guess you would say. And he talks about how he got this cottage in the outside of city in Rhode Island, and he talked about how his neighbor threw parties and all kinds of stuff, and it looks like they were always doing something there. But at this point we don't know who his neighbor is, and how he was gonna spend the whole summer just minding his own business. Here he also mentions that he went to college to become a writer, but he had thrown that all away just to become a businessman. That's how you find out that he's actually a writer and not a stock market type of guy. So then after that scene, we find out that he lives next to a man named Gatsby, which at this point he does not know who Gatsby is, and he just knows that he throws big parties. And across from his house is his cousin's house, Daisy. Daisy is Carey Mulligan's character. She is married to Tom Buchanan, who is played by Joel Edgerton. And so Tom Buchanan is an heir to something, some rich family, and so that's why he has money. He doesn't seem to, it says just public affairs, but the first scene where Tobey Maguire, Nick Carraway is coming up to the house, the phone rings, and Tom Buchanan picks up the phone and tells whoever is on the phone, I told you not to call me here, which, gives you that idea that he is either having an affair or something is happening. We don't know yet in the movie, but obviously, if you have a pretty good gut of telling, when somebody tells you not to call there, obviously, it sounds like it's an affair. He's having an affair with another woman. From the scenes, you can definitely tell they have a lot of money. Their house is huge, and they're just talking about Tom Buchanan taking Nick Carraway into town, and they're just, being boys, playing around. And they walk into this room, and you see all these sheets blowing everywhere. It's not really sheets. They're the curtains of the house, of course, all nice and white and clean and pretty, just flowing around. And then you see this little hand go up, which is, of course, his cousin, Daisy. And you hear voices and giggles, and then you hear another voice and another giggle coming from the room, and then you see that it is Elizabeth Bedecki's character, which is Jordan Baker, and I believe that she is a golfer. I just love the way they talk in this movie, by the way. Of course, you know how we used to talk back then, nothing like we talk like now. Like, oh, of course, my darling, and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, they're still in the house, and Tom asks Nick, hey, I hear that you're living over there with those money-hungry people on the other side of West West Egg, I think is what they say. And then Nick says, oh, it's just a little place, just a little cottage, you know, it's not anything crazy to talk about. And then he says, oh, I don't know anyone over there. And so then the golf chick, she's like, oh, you must know Gatsby. Everybody knows Gatsby. And then the cousin, Daisy, she's like, Gatsby? What Gatsby? Who's Gatsby, pretty much? And just gives you that hint, like she might know who that is. And then, of course, they're out in the yard and just having their dinner. And you can tell that Tom is very conservative, we'll use that word. Very conservative, and he just thinks that we need to watch out with, you know, other races and that kind of thing. You can definitely tell that he's a very all-American conservative man. It doesn't come up too much in the movie, which I'm glad, but you can definitely tell, you know, he doesn't want other people to go above his race, pretty much. But anyways, from that scene you can just really tell that they come from money. And then of course the phone rings again and they know that it's his mistress. Daisy gets into an argument with Tom because they know that he's, you know, doing stuff he shouldn't be doing with somebody else, whoever that person is. But she keeps calling the house. She pretty much tells them, I know that you have someone and I don't care what you do outside of this house, but why does she have to keep calling, pretty much, when we're trying to have dinner and we're trying to be together. They try to convince Nick to stay. Nick says, no, I have to work early in the morning, and they want to go into town. So then Daisy is just talking to Nick, and they're talking about when her baby was born. Tom was not around. Tom, who knows where Tom was, and that when she found out that it was a girl, that she cried. So she says that she cried and that the best thing a girl can be in this world is a fool. Obviously she cried because, you know, back then standards for women were so different than, well, they were. Not as of lately, it doesn't feel like, but that's neither here or there. That has nothing to do with the movie. Well, kind of does, but anyways, that's what they're talking about. And then after that you just see him going back home, and he finds that there's someone at the dock. As you find out, it is Gatsby there at the dock. Nick just says that it looked like he was reaching out for something out there in the dock in the darkness. He wasn't sure what it was. Then forward back to recent, he is at the doctor again. He says the green light. So what does he mean? You guys remember at the beginning I said the beginning of the movie and the scene is just a green light beaming out, kind of like it's like in a lighthouse, but it's not a lighthouse, it's just a green light beaming. The doctor asks him about the green light. Nick tells him that he doesn't want to talk about it, and then the doctor's like, well, why don't you write about it? And then he's like, it didn't bring anything good to anyone, so why would I even write about it? And then the doctor's like, well, nobody has to read it. All you have to do is write about it. You can burn it after you write about it. So then you just see Nick writing away. The doctor tells him to write about anything, a place, anything about that time that he remembers or that he wants to write about. So then you just see him writing, and then like the words are coming out of, this is what I'm talking about, the cinematography part of the movie is where you just see these words popping out as he's writing them. And that's what I was talking about, the cinematography of the movie and the feel that the movie gives you. You can definitely tell, like I said, that it's the director's film. By the way, the feel kind of that the movie gives you. So as he's writing, there's a really cool moment where he talks about the Oculus guy. And if you guys have read the book, that's what's on the cover of the book actually. The Oculus guy, the guy with the glasses and the blue background. So if you guys have not read the book, you don't know what I'm talking about, but I just thought it was a pretty cool thing that they put that in there and that he talks about it, because it is a big part. And like I said, this is like one of the biggest books, especially, I don't know even now in high school if they still have you read that, but when I was in high school, it was one of the pieces that they had you read. along with, you know, Mice and Men and all those other books. Anyways, I'm getting off topic here. I just thought that was a cool thing to mention just because that's part of the book, and he's just describing the way that it looks and how like the men work, like, you know, the poor men and stuff, where they work at in the railroad and all that kind of stuff. So he's just describing that, and later on that will come into play as well, because it's where Tom Buchanan's mistress lives, in that area. So you kind of get the feeling as to what kind of person she is. So after he's talking about all of that stuff and how he talked about the railroad and all that, Tom Buchanan had invited Nick over to a club supposedly, but then they ended up leaving the train right there in that railroad that I was talking about that the men were working on. This is where you find out that he does have a mistress, and the mistress is actually his mechanic, the guy that works on his cars. His wife is Tom's mistress. Her name is Myrtle Wilson, and she's played by Isla Fisher, and then her husband is Jason Clark, and his name is George B. Wilson. He's the mechanic that I was talking about. But there you find out he goes and he talks to the mechanic like nothing, like obviously the husband doesn't know that he's the other guy to his wife. And then he talks to Myrtle and tells her to go book a room in the city or something like that, while the mechanic guy, George, is doing something for him while, you know, they talk together. After that, the scene is where they go into like a hotel kind of place, a motel, where they book a room. And they have, you know, drinks and all kinds of stuff. And Nick actually says, you should not be doing this. I should not be doing this. I shouldn't be here. And there is another girl that comes into play, which I think is Myrtle's friend, cousin, something, and gives Nick drugs. And that's what makes him loosen up a little bit more. He starts to drink and they start to party. And of course you can hear the couple in the other room doing their thing, you know, getting their whatever they're doing. You guys know what I'm talking about. I won't say it out loud in case there's kids watching, but with you guys. But they're doing things in the other room. He's on this room. They're dancing, they're partying, drinking, doing drugs. And that's obviously how you, well, not how you find out. You already knew that he was having an affair, well, because of the phone calls and whatnot. This pretty much tells you, okay, yeah, he is having an affair with this girl. Alright, so they're partying and whatnot. He ends up in his house somehow. We don't know how he got there, but he got there. And then he gets this feeling that Gatsby is watching him. Forward now back to where he's with the doctor, since he was writing all of this down this whole time. That morning is when he gets an invitation to one of Gatsby's parties. Now you can find out later in the movie that Gatsby does not do invitations to anyone. People just show up at his place and party. He is the only one that has ever had an invitation to come over his house. And so he comes over and the party's happening. You see all kinds of people, and then he finds a golfer there. She is at the party as well. He tells her that he's the only one ever to get an invitation. At this party, you just see all kinds of stuff, you know, the big parties that he throws. You can tell that he has money, all of that. I won't go into describing everything because it's a lot, but you can definitely tell that he has money. And we don't know how he comes up with that money, what he does to have this type of money. But in that same party, after Gatsby introduces himself to Nick, he takes the golfer lady to talk to her in private. At this point, we don't know what he has talked to her about. The girl tells Nick at the end of the night, now she understands everything makes sense, that she has something that she needs to talk to him about. Call her up so that they can get together and talk about it. And then Gatsby invites Nick over the next day to go out into town and just have a a day together and whatnot. They go into this club. Now this is where I was talking about the speakeasy. They go into this underground club. You see all these people there drinking. The Prohibition era that comes into play as well. And so you just see Nick there, and then you find that Tom is actually there too, Tom Buchanan. And then he's like, what are you doing talking to this guy and whatnot. He takes him away and then loses Gatsby for a while, and then he meets up with the golfer chick. I keep calling her the golfer chick, I forget her name. Jordan is her name. Jordan Baker. So he goes and he has tea, coffee, whatever with Jordan, and then they explain there's something that Gatsby wants to ask you. He's gonna ask you if you can invite Daisy over for tea at Nick's cottage. And so Nick invites Daisy to the cottage, and Gatsby tells Nick a story that is somewhat of the truth but not totally the truth. So Gatsby turns out to be in the military and he supposedly had to leave, but they had that one night where Daisy and Gatsby were together, and she said that he would wait for him, but then the mom being Tom has money and whatnot, you should go and marry Tom. Of course she does love Tom at the time, but then she finds out that Gatsby is back, but the mom won't let her leave. So there's a scene where you see all these pearls coming out and like on the floor and stuff like that, and those pearls were just gifted from Tom, but she doesn't want to marry him. They end up getting married anyway, and she doesn't hear about Gatsby for a very, very long time. And so now that Daisy's in the cottage, Daisy doesn't know that Gatsby is gonna be there. He kind of gets nervous and runs off and leaves for a while, and then it starts raining and you see him coming in through the front door all soaked because it's raining outside, and he walks into the room where Daisy is in. Nick is like, okay, I'm gonna leave you two to talk, and so he leaves for a while, and it looks like Daisy and Gatsby have been talking about everything, catching up, and then they go to Gatsby's house, and Gatsby shows Daisy around, the stuff that he has, that everything there is for her, and he tells her they should be together. And at first Daisy says yes, let's do it, but she goes back, and of course she's still with Tom, so she has to go back home. And then after that you don't see a lot of the parties anymore. Gatsby stops doing them, and since he already got what he wanted, the parties that he threw and all of that was just to get Daisy's attention. He kind of stops doing that, but the press knows that there's some girl coming in and out of his house. And how is Gatsby making all this money to, have everything that he has? What is he doing? What is his job? What is, everybody's questioning everything that he does. At the same time, the affair is happening. Alright, so what happens then is that Gatsby does throw another party where he invites Daisy and Tom. So they're both there, and that's how they meet Gatsby. Now the following day, they're at Tom's house, but then they're like, it's too hot, we should go into town, we should go do something. And so they do. They end up taking two cars that are both Tom's cars. So Daisy and Gatsby are in one car, and then Tom, Jordan, and Nick are in another car. So they drive off, they go into city, they get a room, and then that's where they get into an argument because Gatsby keeps pushing Daisy to tell Tom that she's going to leave him, or to tell him that he never loved him, that he only loved Gatsby, and that she never loved him, so that she's going to leave him. But then Daisy doesn't know what to do. She snaps and she's like, well, I did love Tom at one point. I did love him. That's why I married him. So I did love him. I can't lie to him and tell him that because that's not true. And so Tom hears that, and then he knows that she is also having an affair with Gatsby. So from there, they race off to go back home, I'm thinking, because she wants to go back home. And so again, Daisy takes off, and then Gatsby goes behind her. Now at this point we think that Gatsby is driving the car still, but it's actually Daisy that's driving the car that they had. and or as Nick and Jordan and Tom go back, they find out that there was an accident, that somebody has been killed. So he stops by the place where the railroad tracks where I talked about, where his mechanic guy is at, tries to find out what happened, who has died, and he finds out that it's Myrtle. So somebody ran her over and died. Then Myrtle's husband, George, remembers the car and thinks that it's Tom that kills her. He's like, it's your car, it was you. And then he's like, I'm not driving that car, I'm driving this car. And so then they know who really was the one that killed Myrtle. It's actually Gatsby, or so you think it's Gatsby. Once they get home, Daisy's at home and Gatsby is there with her, and he comes out of the house and Nick is just leaving the house at that point. Gatsby tells Nick that he's gonna stay there so that he makes sure that nothing bad happens to Daisy. And so Nick tells him not to go ahead and leave, that he will stay and make sure that everything is okay. And before that, Gatsby tells him, I was not the one driving the car, it was Daisy. It was too late when I tried to move the car over before Daisy could hit Myrtle. But Myrtle thought it was Tom, so that's why she ran in front of the car, because she thought that Tom was going to stop and take her and all of that. But it actually wasn't Tom, it was Daisy that was driving the car. So then the next day, Tom goes into where the mechanic guy is and tells him, I know who killed him, and gives him the name and the address of Gatsby so he knows where to go. Now Gatsby is in his house, he is cleaning up from the parties, and Nick goes there and tells him, hey, I don't think that she's going to call you, she's going to stay with Tom. And then he's like, no, I have faith, I know that she will call me when she decides to leave him. She's gonna call me, I know it. And then as they're talking about that, he tells him that he will go into the pool, that he hasn't used it all summer, that he has never actually used the pool, and that he's gonna go ahead and go for a swim and just play it by ear and see what happens with Daisy. He tells his people to bring the phone out to the pool. Then we see George, the mechanic guy, going to the backyard, and then he fires a gun as it's coming out of the pool because the phone is ringing, and it's actually Nick that is calling Gatsby. But he goes out of the pool, and then you hear the gunshots, and that's where George kills Gatsby. You see him out in the pool, and from there it's pretty much over. But from there, Nick does a funeral for Gatsby. All of those people that used to show up for his parties, all of those people never showed up to his funeral. Nick called Daisy to come, and Daisy had left with Tom to live somewhere else. And that's how Nick Carraway, of course, loses his faith in people and all of that, and ends up, with a psychiatrist. So he just ends up writing about it and comes up with the name The Great Gatsby for the book that he wrote about everything that had happened that summer. But that's pretty much it. That is the movie, guys. I didn't retell everything because we would be here for a very long time. Every movie has their lessons, of course. This one definitely has a lot of things for you to learn from, but it's also a really good movie. It has a lot of cool scenes, a lot of good music. I think Jay-Z was one of the main people in this soundtrack for this movie. But yeah, that is the movie. Again, directed by Baz Luhrmann. If you guys have seen Elvis or Romeo and Juliet, definitely can tell that it's the same director by the feel of the movie and the way that he films the movies, of course. But yeah, that is the movie. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video for today. This is the final look, by the way. I just used stuff that I already had here on my desk. It's the Jaclyn Hill palette, the volume 1 one. You guys can see it has been loved. I definitely do like this palette. And then I just used this for my face, the blush and highlight. just use these here. And then bronzer, I just used the cream bronzer from one of my face palettes. And then lippy, I just used this one from M2U NYC. And concealer, I used this from Fenty Beauty. And the foundation I used is just my ColourPop foundation. This one right here, or not foundation, it's a hyaluronic acid tinted moisturizer. And my usual brow stuff, the Anastasia and the brow lift. And then if I'm missing anything else, let me know. If you have questions about anything, just put it down in the comments area. But yeah, this is a finished look. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I definitely like this movie. It's one of my all-time favorite movies, like I said. I hope that you guys like it. I hope that you guys go watch it. There's a lot more stuff in there that I didn't mention. But yeah, give it a watch. Let me know what you guys think. If you guys have watched it, what do you guys think? Do you guys like it? Do you not like it? Do you prefer the book over the movie? Let me know down in the comments area. And yeah, don't forget to hit that subscription button if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, and of course the bell to be notified of when I upload a video. And I'll see you guys in my next one. Toodles!